This is Ministry Eviction gameplay. I am Laura Fedicus. A couple nights ago, I played this game versus Green and Wheatley. It's going to go to 75 minutes long. It's going to get real big armies, big attacks on big forts. It's a good one. Starting out here, I am pretty happy with this spawn hack because I got a lot of good coal patches. I got enough water. I'm going to get nice times on my start. One of the things I'm doing here is keeping track of how many silicon factories I'm putting down over the course of the game. Things are going to get real big, and that's going to help sort of put a scale on how slow you go in the beginning versus how much stuff you've accumulated when you're building on 3/4 of the map over the course of a game. Let's take a look at this map and spawns. I am green and I am on the right side, a little bit above the middle. The thing I'm looking for first when I go into the map is I want to see where green and wheat are. They are the two strongest players and completely capable of beating me in even an unfair fight. I see them in the lower left corner and they've got one border between them. So they are in fist fight range and they're going to have to deal with each other first. So that's a great spawn for me. That's going to slow either of them down regardless of which one wins, and I've got a good shot. As far as my own fist fight range, Death Rain is immediately above me. He's a newer player. He hangs out in Discord though, so I know who he is. And he's playing on mobile, which is kind of a huge disadvantage, especially like in the game that is about to happen, because that's going to drop him down to single-digit frames per second when everything gets built up. So I'm going to need to take care of him first. The other person to look out for is Fuggo, who is at my same elevation but on the left side of the map. He can build a lot of daggers and take a lot of space, but he can't really do anything beyond that. And he's super obnoxious. So I'm gonna have to make sure that I know that he's out here and be prepared to put up some light forts to stop the daggers that he's gonna send out. A couple other players stuck around, but that's the state of things opening up. It's a pretty good map spawn for me, and it gives me a bonus relative to the other good players in the game. This is a long game, and there's a lot of rote economy building going on in between. So I'm going to do a lot of fast forwarding over the less interesting stuff and slow things down for when there's fights and battles and stuff to point out. As far as my opening happening right now, this is pretty much my usual build order of get one of all the basic resources up and then go for the 6 silicon smelter. And there's the point where I noticed that green and wheat are right next to each other and gonna have a bad time. The risk there potentially is that if one of them wins quickly, he can invite the other onto his team, and then both of them would be on the same team, and that would be extremely difficult to go up against. Like, green on army and wheat doing economy would be a terrible combination. Back to regular speed. Now I'm gonna start to actually get into conflict. He's got some daggers out, so I want my basic defenses laid down. 4 arcs and some walls, that's enough to stop some daggers. I also made it a point to put down my power plant before my second set of smelters, because if I need to go for lancers, I will have the power to actually run them. One of the things that can go wrong when you're fighting a fist fight early and you go for the lancers is you don't have the power to back it up, and then you drain yourself. And if your defense is based on lancers and your power goes out, then that's probably the end for you. And while I'm waiting on the silicon to actually finish the first big dagger factory, I can still lay down plans for some of the other economy stuff that is the second step along the ramp up. 6 minutes 30 seconds. That's a nice time for that dagger factory. And with the power and enough graph saved up, I can go for multi-presses sooner than I normally get to. I skipped the whole phase with the 6 regular press air blast. Alright, he's starting to set up some of his own defenses, but he does not have a power plant in place to run them properly. A little column of daggers will cut through that pretty easily, especially once they get the power node down. And now that the power is off on those, it's safe to move the rest of them deeper forward. And I'll stand them within range of his nucleus and hopefully out of range of the arcs that spawn with it. Now a tough part there is that he's got some daggers standing around on the other side. So if I get too close, those are going to shoot back and they have all those walls as protection. And when I take that core, he's going to be able to immediately shoot what's left with whatever remaining daggers. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth before this problem is totally solved. He took that hex directly to the left of him. If he had built into that, he would have fared better, but I was able to split forces to go either way. And then I'll just get surrounded, and pretty easy to dispatch when I've got 8 dagger factories running at full speed. So with the time that I spent doing that, I banked up enough resources to build some bigger other things. So I want my medium-sized power plant. And then I want enough additional silicon and graphite to put out a poly factory. And something to point out that most people don't realize without being told, the player damage gun is set to 0. So shooting at anything with your Omega or Alpha or Beta has no effect. And I had to do that to stop gangs of players coordinating with each other to unfairly get advantages over others. Especially if you do something like 3 people are going to go around shooting with their player ship at the beginning of the game, and one of them builds up their base, and then they all kill themselves and join that team, and are like, oh, we're the winners. Ooh. All right, so I've got a little 5 players are competing. Wheat and green are still copper tier because they don't actually play enough to rank that up. So now I'm going for the bigger power plant. And I'll go put it over on that newly acquired space. Leave the daggers on attack, so it's time to do the actual expansion phase and take down the original command center. Don't leave home without taking down the command center. It's always annoying when you want to start rallying and half your units are going back to your spawn. Yeah, one of the things going on here is there's a bug, the ghost command center bug, where your ground units go to a place where there used to be a command center and there's no way to get rid of it. Actually been working on some server commands to reset the data structures to try and get rid of that. But I need it to actually occur in games to test it. So it sounded from their chatter like Green had got a ghost command center bug. But actually what happened was a pathfinding thing where Wheat had put walls to block off the path to where the command center was, so nobody moved. So they're using the wrong language and confused me and whatever. Right. Phase for the bigger power plant and time for the surge. And that surge is mainly because I want to be putting up my 2 Cyclone T1 forts soon because I know Fogo is coming. And then the interruption there that I didn't have enough Thor to actually finish it. More Graph, more Thor, more of everything. And then go back and finish those. I will end up still falling behind multiple times over the course of the game. It's so easy to forget a particular resource or another until you actually run out and your building stalls. Another point of these forts is that amongst Green and Wheat, one of them should be winning and potentially rather quickly and might actually try and launch an attack at me. They could command center some air units and get them close enough that they're going for my generators versus the other stuff that's available. So I want that stuff heading for forts and not for actual economy. And I also want to make sure I am taking and holding footholds down towards where Wheat's outside is. So the way their game is actually shaping up down there is Wheat has Green completely surrounded in 3 hexes or so. So that's pretty much Wheat definitely wins. If I'm fast enough and can get a foothold down there, then I can attack that exposed outside of Wheat and maybe put an end to both of them early before anyone can boom up. All right, and this is the point where I'm putting down the extra monos and polys. If you forget to do that soon enough, then you run out of copper and lead pretty readily. And I expect to need to do some serious fort breaking this game, so that's the first quad factory. And putting down the T4 factory, I know I need more plastinum to actually fuel it, so I'm going to be targeting titanium patches for those plastinum factories. I am not particularly threatened by Fogo's 2 Cyclone forts, so I'm taking this time to harden my borders all the way around. I am at risk if I don't seal this gap to my south of somebody pushing through all of that empty space and then hitting me from the side. Or if the Magento player was stronger than I give them credit for and did something without me paying attention to or expecting it. I've got a similar situation in the north border with Fogo where I need to get this hex cleared out and get a fort on it before he can. Luckily, I've got the army banked up to do it pretty easily, so I can manipulate command centers and rallying to build up that army and then send it to the left and take that. And at the same time, I can get a glimpse of Fogo starting to upgrade his forts, which I don't really want to deal with somebody having large forts right there. I'd much rather break through one of his weaker ones before he can get to the point of upgrading it. So that's going to be my next goal, is sort of expanding towards the center. If that doesn't look very effective, but I'd still just rather not if I don't have to. Yeah, and in those map glimpses, you can see that Wheat has a particular style to playing where he is the most defensive good player. Uh, he will build a ring of extremely powerful forts and then build extremely dense economy behind those forts and build up an army of T5s or something. And I have lost several games in the past that were excruciatingly painful where I took 3/4 of the map and he had 1/4 and he built a bunch of corvuses in there and just cut through me and there was nothing I could do because I still wasn't keeping up. And I didn't have enough unit production to actually get through the forts that he had. So there is a race against time, not letting up, where I need to get to wheat and I need to start breaking in before he can put his big fat forts up all the way around. And on the way, I've got to cut through Fuggo a little bit. I don't think I saw it immediately at the time, but he just left. So that's... Eventually, I'm going to actually notice that he's not in the game anymore. And I'm going to take that as an opening to try and absorb all of his territory instead of going for wheat fast. Like wheat, one of his big forts are up. That sets a timer where I need to start heading in that direction immediately. If I can get around the edge before he can complete that wall, then I can save myself a lot of work. All right, that gets me down to the point of having a border with wheat. Fortunately, it's the border with the big giant fort. But now he's gonna have to actually stop doing whatever it is he has been doing and actually put his real defense into play. I also need to get my rallying moving. And Fuggo still has daggers left on attack that I'll need to at least protect this. Turtle spot. Yes. Alright, he's got his second fort mostly finished. I'm not sure why he built it on that spot instead of the direction I was coming from. I would really like to be able to direct an army right there or to the left at this point, but he's got bait in his forts that's gonna pull them to the right anyway. So that's not even an attack worth doing at all. So this is a weird arrangement where I've got to set up a defense that protects both from the top and the bottom. So just sort of reverse it. I'm not going to leave it like that. That's not what I want to do. But without looking carefully, I do expect wheat to actually have an army and be able to do something, and he just hasn't yet. Eventually, I'm going to make the decision to clear out and take all of Fuggo's space instead of pushing on Wheatley. I have improved my big economy game well enough that I might actually be able to outcompete him. And the strategy that I'm actually going to go for to do that is to try and run him out of ammo. So everything he's using, eats a lot of phase and eats a lot of surge to actually fire those cyclones. So if I send a constant feed of flares into as many of those forts as I can, then I can run him out of surge and maybe actually shut down those guns. This hex is the first big point of doing that, where I've got these completely self-contained flare factories and some horizons too. And these just use power. So I wrap these around a core, and then I put a unloader overdrive, and it makes a lot of flares very quickly. And then I want to place several of those at different points on the map so that they each head to a different fort. And that'll get the most cyclones firing at the same time. Focusing on air and leaving it on attack to do that ammo thing doesn't get me more space in these directions. So I'm dropping some crawler land factories, that sort of thing, since those will path to these random Fuggo cores that are left behind. And the secondary hope of running him out of Surge is that I expect that he's got T5 factories. That's what he's usually doing behind the veil on this. So if I can get him burning a lot of Surge on ammo, that's not going into T5 production. I'm also expecting quads. And the protection that I've tried to settle on for myself and my forts against quads is upgrade to nucleuses when I can. And you gotta have shields around it, guaranteed. And also lots of tsunamis. So the point of the tsunamis being you want to actually push the quads away from the core so that when they die, they're not dying on the core or near it. They are meat shields, getting the turrets not shooting at your zeniths, and the crash damage actually does damage to stuff under shields. Both of those are necessary. Still expecting Corvuses, so now I'm putting up the heavy plast walls around my stuff. Those combined with big polyswarms and menders can hold off a fair number of Corvuses, especially since when he does use them, he uses them like a coward. They will just rally them next to in the adjacent hex and shoot through and wait until he has enough to alpha strike whatever's in there, which is a lot and takes a while to get. So when I do actually see that coming, I can respond to it. The flare factory thing probably wasn't the way to go, especially I will have to do stops and rallies and targeted attacks. And then all those flare factories fill up the unit cap almost immediately and then sit there idle. So it causes power fluctuations too. I will check my power when all of those are off and, oh, I've got an extra 50,000 power. And then I do the attack, all the flares die and start rebuilding. And it's like, oh, I've got negative 50,000 power. Oh, that is weird. Some big battery fields would mess with that. I do end up adding some extra batteries at some point. Flares are good for, getting turrets turned around when you're doing your attack, especially if you can rally close enough that they're not too far ahead of the rest of the units. Horizons are good at that too. Yeah, I'm dissatisfied with the flares using up the ammo. So now I'm going to put my own T5 factory, expecting the possibility that it's going to be Corvuses versus Corvuses in an artillery war. But since my factory is real easy to drop and I've got a pretty easy time making phase and surge, then I'm pretty sure that I could build more Corvuses than he could in his tiny little dense land down there and actually overpower him. This is a lovely poly blob. Another nice thing about polys is it's a warning if you're getting attacked. If you're losing buildings, the polys will fly away to rebuild them. And if your polys are on the screen with you building whatever you are, then that will give you an indication that I need to check the map right now to see what's being attacked and where. Starting to rally up, and I've got other command centers I need to take down to get all of those in the same place. So with several Zenith factories, all those flare factories, yeah, this is the point where I saw someone in the text made me think to actually look around to the side, and he does not have his forts down in the bottom. He's got sort of some scrappy impromptu defense on the other side of that void. But that's just cyclones, and one mass driver isn't going to keep all of those in ammo. So that's a good place to try to attack. So I've got to get a rally stored up, and I have to work them around his forts and then down to the south there. So that's going to take some careful deconstructing of things to work them around. And I've got to get them far enough down there that they're going to go to a power plant down in his economy instead of into a bait fort. And while I'm waiting for that rally stuff to get there, I can finish this fort. So another habit of Wheat's is he will stay in his turtle shell even though there are obvious places where he should be trying to push out. Like this was an empty core for a long time. He could have made a few crawlers and gone towards it or something, but he didn't. And that would have, if he had taken that, that would have given him an avenue to head east and then north and actually do some damage to me. But no, he stays in his place. Both of them are working, putting more defenses up in those cells. So yeah, there's some meltdowns, there's some more cyclones going up. I don't think... Yeah. And I'm going to pull out my quick defense schematic, expecting to be able to build into this if it actually takes it. Because all those quads near the center, that looks like that should work. But really, I think it's the megas that tilted it coming through. And he's got enough polys rebuilding. So he weathers that attack. It would be reasonable to try and keep attacking at that point, since they're never going to be able to put up as strong defense in what are effectively economy hexes. It looks like that's what I'm thinking. I'm going to keep pulling rallies around to the bottom. While also being nervous that I've only got a few thousand silicon banked up. More zeniths too. No. Should have taken away the overdrives on those. Looks like I forgot to. One of the things that sort of catches my nervousness when I'm playing is I try not to put overdrive domes in the same hexes or covering any part of a Thor plant. Because I've had some bad instances where if you're putting your dome over some of the power plants but not the support cryo generation, then you can actually end up running it out and blowing up the plant, even without having a power outage to cause it in the first place. So I end up just being skittish about that and avoiding domes going anywhere near those. It's got the overdrives with phase in it anyway, so it's only 25% that it loses out. And I'm starting to accumulate some corvuses, which, worst case scenario, that'll be the thing that actually cuts through them. Here comes the attack. So flares go in, quads go over the core, shields are down, and the bombs actually do the work. So that was enough attack to actually take out one of these forts. 6 fuses, 12 cyclones, phase going into all the it's got a dome, it's got phase going into all the menders, so it's tough to crack, but that was enough. So yes, I can break those forts, and having seen the success of that attack, I'm going to keep that in mind. The disappointment there being that his counterattack took it right back. So that was expensive for both of us as far as units and rebuilding and everything. But I can get in there, so I just need to build up enough to do those attacks frequently enough that I can get in further. And this is strengthening my forts further, so I'm now adding my own phase and overdrive, which will go into the menders a bit, and tsunamis, which I'm expecting to try and push quads away from the cores. So I'll just go through and beef up everything while I'm waiting for more units to accumulate for another attack. So I scroll down and I see, oh, it looks like he's got a power outage. Which, okay, I'll attack right now. Let's go. This one doesn't work as well. There weren't as many quads saved up, pretty much. Otherwise, I would have got it. And one of my Corvus took some damage there, so I want to throw some Novas into the mix to heal that up while everybody's standing around. Putting pulsars out would be a good idea too, since then everybody would be getting the pulsar shield. And then just like one factory of that would cover an entire army. But actually right now I've got a titanium and a silicon shortage that I need to deal with. Titanium's shortage is really obnoxious because air blasts need titanium, even laser drills. Most of that was probably actually going into quad factories, so turning off the Zenith factory isn't going to impact it much. But I've got positive growth on titanium now. All right, so he's rallying, I'm rallying, they're pretty close to each other. He's making tanks of oil in that hex. I don't know what the point of those is. But green has started adding shields to the back of the forts that stay up longer. And he did a counterattack at the same time, which sent some wild quads into my backfield. Which is making me nervous, because wild quads in the backfield is a bad way to go down, and has gotten me plenty of times in the past. Luckily, I've got defense left over from when I was worried about Fogo that will at least attract these things or get them, whatever. He stopped his army. If he had left attack on, that quad would have done a lot more damage, and any others that might have gone somewhere that I didn't catch a look at. So I'm happy with those Corvuses shooting that spot, because that's going to pull his poly attention to rebuilding those walls constantly. Wheat hopes I'm recording this. I am. I think I've decided I want more T5 at this point, so I'm putting up more surge factories and more phase factories. silicon. So the Corvus is probably actually a mistake here. Since I'm so focused on air attacks, then anything contributing more to those would be doing me more good than the Corvuses, which have sort of a fundamentally different tactical movement that you need to do on them that isn't really compatible with having an air army. Let's look at Wheat's base. What is going on here? So this is what playing dense looks like. He's got lots of domes all over the place, overlapping, lots of crucibles, lots of Thor factories. There's a quad factory. He's more overlapping domes, like he'll have 3 or 4 domes in each hex. Platinum belts everywhere. This is what playing dense looks like. And then back to his perimeter. Oh, I've gone over 1,000 silicon per second. So it's not actually, it's the capacity to make 1,000 per second. It's not actually making that much because all the flare factory silicon is no longer producing since it's full, since I'm at the unit cop for flares. So I want to make sure that when I do the attack, everything goes to the same fort, and that pretty much means heading for this corner. So I'm going to reposition things to try and get to that corner. So those will move into position, and I'm going to notice that my silicon is looking sad, and I'm going to have to go on another economy building spree. This map check, I see that Wheat's got our army rallied to that spot I just moved my army away from. So that makes me nervous, like, okay, let's go for it. I need to distract him, have him not attack that. This hex is pretty strong. They head in there. I think I get him with crashing quad damage, but I'm not sure because it's real tough to see under all that. But he's taken my fort out, so he is also making inroads that I need to worry about. I stop my army to hold that hex. The polys will rebuild those previous defenses I had. Then I need to get it back on attack so that I can retake that core, and my polys will rebuild my fort that I lost. One of the things that they do rebuild is a command center, and when they rebuild a command center, they leave it on an old command. So that actually stops my army when I don't want it to stop, and I have to drop another one quickly with the silicon shortage, so it builds a little slower, so that I can turn the attack command back on. But it looks like I am holding otherwise. I got some quads in the backfield after that I think they died and stuff is getting recaptured and rebuilt, but I can't really see because I can't move over there without finishing this. Like 300 phase is way too low to be comfortable with, especially since so much of my, especially power plants, are being powered by phase. Like if I get a serious power drop, which I'm also at risk of doing here, if my power goes out, then I've got a lot of trouble ahead. I don't know if you'd be able to recover from it, but I'd have a terrible time trying to reboot from a deficit of what would probably be like 300,000 or 400,000. Yeah. So I'm there. I had 3 million stored up, and I get down to maybe 400,000 energy, going in at like negative 30k per second. That is dangerous. And I'm not even paying attention to the attack, which has cut through more of the forts. Might be mostly Corvus work. I didn't actually get a good look at it because I was so worried about making sure my power doesn't go out and my silicon shortage. And no, it's happening! It's happening! Uh, so yeah, let's go have a look. Corvuses doing the work, cutting through the economy, breaking through another one of those forts. There it is. Like, all of that is sweet, juicy meat that will be easy to take out. Green trying to claim a moral victory because he basically sabotaged wheat into slowing him down so significantly. Works for me. So eventually his power will go out. That drops the shields, and then the quads just fly over and take everything out. Okay, so that part where I say his attack almost blew my power, that's not what happened. What happened was my attack dropped my flare count below the cap, and all my flare factories started producing again. And then they started drawing power that they weren't before, and so my misjudgment of how much I was actually using, that kicked in. So that's what really happened there. But I couldn't tell in the moment because you get all sort of hyped up and in tension brain when you're playing in a game like this. This is actually the first time that I've managed to organically beat wheat after he had put up his giant stupid turtle shell. I hate playing against that shit because you end up with forts that are just so tough to break, and even if you do get one, you can't get any deeper because you're out of army, because you spent your whole army breaking one fort. He said it made a difference, but I'd never thought of it before. The fact that with my unit cap in the 300 or 400 range, I have an extremely large number of polys going around doing everything I want, including rebuilding forts basically instantaneously, and all those buffer walls that I put up. Megas would be doing a similar thing if I added them in. They'd be even tougher for him to break, but Megas are big and expensive. Anyway, good game.